Alright, so we are ready to create a database, but if we tried it now, it would actually not work. And that's because we have the DB context, which will configure the database for us and seed it, but we don't have it set up as a service. So we have to go to startup.cs, and just like we set up the service for the MVC, we need to add the DB context to the services as well. So I'll go to services dot and then add DB context, and you can see that's the method that actually adds the DB context to the services. And the one I want to add is the one that we created, which is the event context. And of course it doesn't know where it is, so let's bring in the namespace, which is in comedy events.context folder. And that's it. Now we can create a database, and to do that, let's go to Tools, then NuGet Package Manager and Package Manager Console. And to create the database, we first need to create the first migration. So we'll do add-migration, and I'll call it initial migration, and press enter. And you can see that the migration was created. If you go to Solution Explorer, you can see that now there's a folder called migration with the initial migration as well. And this is what was created for us. You can see that it will create a table comedians with the ID, first name, last name, contact, phone, and so forth. It will create a table for the venues with all the properties, and it will create a table for the events. And notice that, for example, for the events, it adds the foreign keys for the venue ID, and we have the gig, which also has a foreign key for the comedian as well as for the event ID. And here is the migration builder, which is the seeding for our database as well, all ready to go. So how do we actually proceed next? Well, we'll type update database, and that will create a database and proceed with seeding it as well. So press enter, and you can see all this is being created and seeded, and I have it all the way on the bottom, which you cannot see, but you can see that I got it done and there are no errors. So let's actually see what was created. Let's go to View and then to SQL Server Object Explorer. Let's open the local database, and here is the API comedy database that we created. Let's open the tables, and you can see that we have the comedians, events, gigs, and venues. And when I open it, or right click and click View Data, you can see I have two comedians with ID 1 and 2, Pavel Almashi and Robin William. If I go to Events, View Data, I have the one event called Funny Comedy Night, which is the venue ID 1. You can see that it was added to it as a foreign key. And here is gig table, so you can see that we have two gigs, one that belongs to comedian with ID 1, and the second one belongs to comedian with ID 2, and both these gigs are happening in the event with the ID of 1. And we have the venues. We have one venue for the Mohegan Sun. We can also see the designer of the tables. So for example, for the comedians, you can see there are no foreign keys, it's just properties for the comedian. But when I go to events and view designer, now you can see that there is a foreign key for the venue ID. So the venue ID is required. And the same when we go to gigs, we have two foreign keys now for the comedian ID that have been added, as well as the event ID. So our database has been successfully created and seeded, and now we are ready to move forward and start actually creating our queries.